Now, it's easy to think about death, isn't it, just as an event at the end of our life, one that isn't very pleasant, and perhaps we don't like to think about too much, if at all. But actually, when Jesus was talking about the subject of death, he made it clear that death is part of the daily experience for people who follow him in at least three ways. It's part of our daily experience. And what do we mean by that? Well, firstly, there's the obvious way in which death is part of everyone's experience, isn't it? We're all mortal. We've got perishable, to use the language of the passage, we've got perishable bodies. And our bodies are failing. Maybe we're feeling young and sprightly this morning, and we don't really feel that our bodies are failing. But one day we're going to realize that actually the time's ticking on, our bodies are failing, we're aging, and we're mortal. And as that process, that inevitable process goes on, we feel increasing pains as we do so. So there's that obvious daily experience of death, the fact that we're all mortal, that we're going to die one day. But for the Christian as well, secondly, there's also a daily struggle with sin. And the Bible uses the language of putting to death the deeds of the body, or sometimes in sort of technical language, this is called the mortification of the flesh. This is the painful process of recognizing in ourselves the things that we do, the attitudes that we have that don't please God, and literally engaging in a mortal combat with them through the Holy Spirit's help. So that's a second way in which Christians daily experience death. We realize that there are things in our lives that don't please God, and that we need to actively put them to death. And thirdly, for the Christian as well, there's another way in which we daily experience death, that loss of life. And that is the painful sacrifice of choosing to go Jesus' way rather than our own way. Jesus said, if anyone would follow me, they must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Literally, he's using the language of putting yourself to death. Not literally, physically, of course. But in those daily choices that we make, choosing to follow him, even though it means giving up our life and our freedom sometimes. Sometimes it will feel like a death choice. And so the Christian experience is, on the one hand, a joyful union with Jesus, knowing God as our Father, being helped by the Holy Spirit. It's the most wonderful and incomparable experience. But at the same time, at one and the same time, it is also a daily experience of death, a very painful experience of loss of life, a gradual loss of life. And you don't need me to tell you how painful this experience can be. And perhaps it only gets more painful the longer we go on in the Christian life. And so it can be easy to think, can't it? We hit a certain point in our Christian experience of walk. Can I really do this? Yes, on the one hand, I have that wonderful joy, but the daily experience of death is just so painful, and it just seems to get worse and worse. Is it really going to end well, or is death going to win in the end? This passage was read at my dad's funeral. My dad died 10 years ago at quite a young age of 64. And I remember one of my uncles coming up to me afterwards and talking about this passage and saying, actually, the concern of the Apostle Paul in this passage is for those of us who are left behind, that we should endure in our Christian faith if we're Christians. And that's exactly right, isn't it? That's exactly his concern here. He's concerned about the Christians, that they will keep going. They will keep being Christians, even though it can be and is so painful on a daily basis. So I've tried to summarize the passage. Here's the first little summary, I think, of verses 50 to 57. The death that Christians experience will one day be no more.